11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. What a fight! I think the winner won it.
Juan, the Hispanic causing panic, Lascano.
And thanks to those joining me live, those that join us here on the archive. Just here on the archive, hit that like button. This is the ATP podcast this Sunday. Calix can't make it, but I am being joined by the one and the only Lyndon from the Boxing Deep Dive. It's Monday over there. It's Sunday here. It's like a dual, like 2-day at the same time podcast. You know what I mean? So there you go. How's it going, Lyndon?
Really good, mate, and I'm honoured to be an honorary Hispanic causing panic today.
Right.
I'll do my best to do Calix proud, but no, fantastic to be on, mate, and plenty going on over the weekend, wasn't there?
It's not a big bar to overcome, really, Calix. You know, no.
He's very good, Calix. He's very good. Knows his stuff.
All right. Well, shout out to Calix nonetheless. He's got some coaching that he's doing for some championship with his kids and all that. So he's doing some good things. So shout out to him and all of New Orleans and all that. So shout out to LT first in the chat. And we're live on X on his Twitter, and we're live on my channel here on D-Style Boxing. You guys can catch Calix exclusively on D-Style Boxing here on YouTube when he does a solo podcasting as well. So that's new to the channel. And look, there was some sad news over the weekend. Big George Foreman passed away. Heavyweight champion of the world in the 70s, comes back 20 years later. Although it was a couple years of his comeback, but 20 years later, he wins the heavyweight championship of the world. Big upset as a big right hand, and just leaves Michael Moore paralyzed right on the canvas. Devastating knockout. First thing George Foreman does is give all praise to. He goes to his corner and he gives praise to the Lord, and that's what he did. You know what I mean? And then that was an unbelievable. That was what, in 94?
94, yeah.
And of course we all know about when he first won. He defeated another legend in his own right, Smoking Joe Frazier. And although it was in a losing effort, he's still part of one of the biggest heavyweight fights of all time in Zaire, against the greatest Muhammad Ali. All right. And man, Lyndon, thoughts on George Foreman?
Oh, look, I just commented the other day, you know, like it's when you're my age, I'm 50, so I know you're a little bit younger than me, but when you grow up with these guys, even though George and Ali and Fraser were all maybe just before my time, you grow up with these fighters and you watch them, you admire them, and when they pass, it's hard to take. I don't know. I'm sure there's some viewers out there. I mean, I must admit, I make no bones about it. I'm not afraid to admit that, you know, I was a bit teary on Saturday. I mean, or whatever time it was over there. I mean, it's hard to when these icons, when these icons of the sport pass away. I mean, we've had just recently Greg Haugen. We had Livingston Bramble over the weekend as well. It's tough, and they don't come much bigger than George Foreman. And what was it, 2016 when Ali died, and then of course Fraser and now Foreman, and it's it's difficult. And look, those three, I mean, I referred to them as immortals, not just great fighters. They were immortal fighters, and they really were. And he's along with the other two left such a legacy on this sport. And they really were all crossover type of stars as well, not just in the boxing world, but sporting world, the entertainment world. And yeah, it was tough, mate. It was tough, but they're all united now, wherever they are, and we can all just, we've got the memories anyway. But yeah, it was a tough weekend.
Yep. Big George Foreman born in Texas. Uh, from the South. He had that country strength. He just had this natural strength, this guys that are just born with it. He was just strong, and a lot of fighters. Briggs, I know he was mentioned in the chat saying Foreman was wrong. I do think Foreman won that fight, but it is what it is. But Briggs mentioned it. Holyfield mentioned it. Many mentioned about like just how paralyzing his power was. It's Holyfield. It's kind of funny how he mentioned it, kind of like after one of the rounds, I had to take a moment to like feel myself again, to walk back to my corner. That's how hard this guy hit. And this was to have two runs in two different decades,
20 years apart. Yeah.
20 years apart. That is amazing. I like, it's hard to believe now. And he did win with that. He was behind on the cards and he landed that big shot and obviously got the knockout. But I believe Moore was the first southpaw champion, right? The heavyweight.
He was, yeah.
So like it was like a significant to a certain degree, at least for those times, to never really seen a heavyweight southpaw, and it just kind of it was just meant to be that it would be Foreman with the right hand to put a stop to that. You know what I mean? Foreman already had his shots against Holyfield before that, and even at the time the WBO was not recognized, but he had to fight with Tommy Morrison. And had a spirited effort. So nobody was really expecting it. I think it was just like a routine fight, another defense for Michael Moore against a name. And then obviously he gets a W. So
yeah, and those two different stints, he was a sort of a different fighter, in the 70s, he was, we referred to him as that baddest man on the planet type of guy, and he really was before Tyson, and he was just so intimidating. And back then, he was even more dynamic because he was obviously a lot younger, and he had those just unbelievable uppercuts and hooks that he'd throw. And the second coming of George was more the more patient sort of type of fight. And of course, that's going to be the case when you're in your 40s. But he just continually ground these guys down, but he still maintained that knockout power. And I'm not quite sure exactly how many fights he had in his second coming, but he won most of those by knockout. So, and even I still remember the knockout of Jerry Cooney, how devastating that was, and just one of those punches. But just two different types of guys. One thing that really struck me with George was the two different personas of George. We had that intimidating, really fearsome guy in the 70s, and in the 80s and 90s, it was this lovable, cuddly George, but still a killer in the ring. So it's what he's done to come back and win the title 20 years later. There's no way that'll ever be done again. No way.
No, not that. I mean, somebody might break the record in terms of the age, maybe.
Yeah, of course.
But the 20 years apart, that's not a chance. I mean,
not many fighters have 20-year careers, let alone having two careers that spanned over 30 years, whatever it was. Just amazing.
I saw your walking box. I actually just watched it maybe like 2 hours ago when you talked about it. And you touched on how like his comeback fight, because I don't remember this. I was probably just way too young, obviously. But if you want to expand on that, like it was treated like a joke. Like they kind of made fun of him when he came back.
Well, I'm not quite sure exactly what he weighed. You can probably look it on BoxRec, but I remember they had the vision. It was sort of like one of those things they do at the end of a sports show, and and here's one that will make you laugh. It's the former heavyweight champion George Foreman back, and he did. I mean, you could quite understand why they were amused by it, because I mean, he looked slow. He had to have been about 300 pounds. I mean, he was just trying to sort of go after Steve Zowski, and he got him out of there, but he kept fighting regularly. He got himself back in the shape. He got fight fit, and he got his opportunity. And that fight with Holyfield, I mean, he gave Holyfield all he could handle, and that was a peak Holyfield. Didn't win, of course, but he's just, to be able to do that, as you said, no doubt someone will probably break the record as far as being 45 years of age, but to do it that far apart, I just can't see it ever. I mean, we all revel in how good Bernard Hopkins was. What was he, late 40s as well? But to do it at that weight against the killers at the heavyweight division, just amazing.
Yeah, and the 90s was a really good era too. There was some really solid
Tyson, Lewis, they were all there.
Do you think, because there was always talks about. I know Don King wanted to make Foreman versus Tyson, which would have been a massive fight.
Mm.
It would have been a blockbuster success pay-per-view wise, but it never happened, right?
Mm.
And the rumor was always that Tyson didn't want to fight him.
That's
right.
right.
And I think he told Don King, like, well, you love him so much, why don't you fight him? Right. He wasn't interested. Like, and I know a lot of people that feel this way. Like me, I personally feel like Tyson was just too much in his prime. I do think he would have won, but I'm not sure. But some people actually think the opposite. They think Foreman would have destroyed Tyson. But how do you feel about it?
No, look, I still think if it had been what was the early to mid 90s, I think was it early 90s? I think they were talking about it. Look, I think it would have been a very similar fight to the Holyfield fight. Holyfield throws a lot more punches than what Tyson did, but I think it would be a case of Big Jaw standing up there, giving his best, but with Tyson coming in from underneath the different angles, coming over the top. I'm not sure whether George would have had the speed or reflexes to go with Mike. But I think the reason why they would have been hesitant to fight George Foreman, this is Tyson's crew, was that if he didn't bomb him out of there early, George would just hang around and hang around and hang around. Tyson might punch himself out. George might come on, and we could have had a repeat of the Mora fight. But I just think back then Tyson was just something else, and I just think his youth, his, as I said, his angle, speed, his volume of punches just would have been too much.
Yeah, I could see that, and his wins over he beat
him out though. Sorry to cut you off. I don't think he would have knocked George out though.
Probably not, but that's the thing, like, because how would Tyson like if he doesn't knock a guy out in the first 6-7 rounds, and then what? With Holyfield, right. We know Holyfield's metal and like he could keep going, but I'm not sure about Tyson. I would still favor him, though. I would still favor Tyson to win. I do like the 70s itself. Like if he would have retired and never came back, he would still be a Hall of Famer. We would still be talking about him like we talk about Sonny Liston, for example. But his wins over Smoking Joe Frazier, just dominating wins. I mean, just to destroy Frazier that way. He did it twice, beat him twice. So it wasn't some fluke or something. Like he just like it was just a bad style for Joe Frazier, and for that reason, people were kind of scared for Ali.
Yeah, they were, and those types of fighters that like Ken Norton as well, who just would stand in front of George, are always going to be destined for that to happen. And but yeah, you're right. He would and you look at those fights, especially the first Frazier fight, and also the Ken Norton fight. This is a guy who was just an absolute monster back then. And you're right, though. If he had retired after the Jimmy Young fight, I think he still would have been seen as a great, but probably not in the same light as what he had when he won the title again. But I think it was almost destiny for him to come back because he had so much to offer. Was it 1977 was the Jimmy Young fight, and he was still only a young man back then. So it's almost like he's a very religious man, so maybe it was the calling from above, I don't know, to get him back just for that unfinished business. But I'm really glad that he came back, and I think it's added to it. Yes, he still would have been a legend even if he hadn't come back, but the fact he came back and won the heavyweight title at 45 years of age, while he's now on a par with those top 5 or 6 heavyweights of all time.
Yeah, he made that big comeback. And then, of course, there's that other part of his career, which was the commentary on HBO. I love them on HBO. I thought he was one of the best parts. Yeah, I loved his takes. And he was good at explaining to the audience, like, the fighter's perspective without being too complicated about it. I thought he was really good at that. I thought it was really colorful. I thought, if he felt a commentator was out of line, he was not afraid to speak out. Like, it's just the way he was. The one time I remember is when Jim Lampley was really getting on Prince Hamed about Allah, right? And while Barrera's beating him up, and Foreman just like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what you're on about. It essentially told him, like, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, you're going too far here. You know what I mean? Like his religion has nothing to do with the boxing match. So that was always cool. And there was also another line that I remember very vividly. It was after the second Barrera Morales fight, and Lambert's talking about how it wasn't as violent, it wasn't as crazy as the first fight. And he said, well, that's when they were fools. Now they're millionaires, right? So I thought that was a great line. And of course, a Foreman grill. Who didn't have a Foreman grill?
Yeah.
That's one of the first things I bought. I was a teenager. I was working for $5 an hour. I was a dishwasher. I would right after school, I would go to work, and that's how I got my money. And one of the first things I bought was a George Foreman grill.
And I think it made him over $300 million, that grill. So, but I'm with you as far as the commentating goes. And this is what we're lacking these days. And I'm sure the DAZNs and all these types of companies are all scratching their heads thinking, why aren't we sort of being embraced by the boxing fans? Because they haven't got a George Foreman type of guy on commentary. They get all these influencers and all the rest of it. And they don't have someone like that who, like you said, calls it the way it is. And more importantly, knows what it's like to be at the top level, knows what's going through a fighter's head. We do miss it, and we miss HBO in general. I really miss that channel, and even Showtime was the next one, but that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, and Roy Jones Jr. was sort of similar as well, very well spoken and knows their stuff. And as I said, that's what we're lacking these days on these telecasts. People that actually know what they're talking about, but have also been in a fighter's shoes. But yeah, well, this is again, I suppose, part of his legend, the fighter, the commentator, the businessman, the entrepreneur, just an unbelievable human being.
Yeah, great guy for sure. And he always give a shout out to El Paso and the Mexican food. He loved it here, so just extra love for him as well. So so rest in peace to George Foreman. He's a living legend, and legends never die. Like, people will know about Foreman forever.
Right.
So that's that. Now, one thing I do want to mention, and I always wonder, is it just me or am I just older or what? But, and this is no offense to any of I have a lot of respect for all fighters and modern day fighters, but fighters today don't seem to have the same larger than life feel anymore. They just, I don't know what it is. They don't seem to have this larger than life persona anymore. Even the popular ones, like they just don't seem to have it. I don't know. It's just from my perspective. Maybe I'm remembering Foreman as a kid, so maybe it's nostalgia. But I just don't feel it like that. I don't get that larger than life personality anymore from fighters.
Yeah, well, as obviously you get older, and then when you pass, of course, your legend grows. But you're right. I mean, really, we go back to with the heavyweights. Tyson was probably the biggest one since then, and even these days, it's not. Even though we've got some great fighters, Canelo's obviously got that mystique about him as well. I'm sure he'll be renowned, in 10 or 20 years' time. But yeah, you're right. I mean, right back to I suppose Pacquiao, De La Hoya, maybe Mayweather, but apart from that, yeah, not much coming through. And even as someone like an Inoue, who's so destructive and well respected, still hasn't got that aura about him. I know because maybe he's Japanese and it's a bit different in Japan, but I'm with you. It's just, yeah, it's especially again, as I said, someone my age coming up through the 80s and 90s and 2000s. It's just not the same. But it is what it is. It's a different sport these days, and we just have to like it and get on with it.
100%. But we got to get Lyndon a Hispanic Causing Panic T-shirt, since he's an honorary Hispanic Causing Panic. You know what I mean?
Good.
I'll send it out to you. You can wear it on the podcast.
Where's the beanie today?
The beanie's somewhere. It's not cold anymore, so I'm kind of like, it was a hot day today, but it's around somewhere. So let's talk about the Australian card. First, Sugar Neeks against Nina Hughes. I did pick Neeks to win. I thought she would win the decision, usually how she wins. But this time she kind of bullied Nina around. Like, I think maybe she saw enough in the first fight that she felt confident applying the pressure and busted up her nose. Nina did say it was from a headbutt. I'll have to rewatch it. Maybe it was, but I mean, it was accidental, and Neeks took advantage of it, and she got the stoppage, and Nina she didn't look the same anymore.
42 years of age is what she looked.
I mean, she looked a lot better in the first fight.
Yeah, look, I think in the first fight, and I was actually in the arena that night, I think Shanika was more reactive in that fight. Maybe she gave Nina Hughes too much respect. I don't know. Nina Hughes was, of course, the champion. And, of course, we had the controversy after the fight where Nina Hughes was announced the winner, and then it was overturned to Shanika. So I just think she had something to prove. And I thought in the first round when she really came out, And again, Nina Hughes being 42 years of age, hadn't fought since the first fight as well as Shanika. But I thought she did what she had to do. And the game plan was obviously to put the pressure on her, to put the heat on her, maybe fight 2 minutes of every round, being a lot older than Shanika. And I just thought she fought well. She does sometimes smother her own work a little bit, Shanika, but I thought she boxed well. She's got a good jab, very, very good amateur pedigree as well, and she's had 20-odd fights now, I think, as a pro. So, and she's, 29 years of age. So she's just coming into her prime now, and I just think that's what it looked like, a fighter coming into the prime and another former champion, maybe on the downward slide. But, good performance in front of her hometown, Shanika, and she's got some big things coming up.
Yeah, and not only that, and I know she's a former world champion on paper, Hughes, but like she also has less. She has less experience than Chernica. Like, Chernika's the veteran here, even though she's younger. She's the pro veteran in that ring. So, and I think it showed. I think it showed in both fights, but especially in this one. So Chernica gets the win, and we'll see where she goes from there. Tara Brown defeats Skye Nicholson in a strange fight. I was trying to make the best of the fight for what it was. I do think this, though. I saw Skye talk afterwards, and I could see why she feels this way, but she said, I didn't feel like myself. I didn't. And I just think, I believe in cause and effect, right? I believe in every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the reason you didn't feel the same, Skye, is because you had somebody that could match you better with the speed, the footwork. Like you had somebody you didn't have that many advantages over like that. And someone who could match you with skill. I think that's why you didn't feel the same. And that's what I think. And I honestly don't think Skye could do any better. And the reason I say that, I know she doesn't have the power. What is she going to do? Sit on her punches and try to trade with Brown? Is she going to throw more combinations? Well, that's just going to leave her open to get hit even more. I actually thought Skye fought the best possible fight she could have fought for her style. I think she won enough rounds. You could make an argument for her, even if somebody wants to give it to her, 5 rounds to 4. I'm not going to complain. 6 rounds to 4. I'm sorry. I'm not going to complain. Like, you could argue that. But I think that's the best she can do, and I think that's problematic. She just doesn't throw enough, and she's just a little too negative in that ring, and she cannot engage either, in my opinion. But how did you see it?
Yeah, no, I agree. And isn't it amazing that pretty much every fighter that loses says they just didn't feel themselves in there? It's amazing. It's a coincidence, isn't it? That
right.
Didn't feel myself. I had an opponent that was all over me and making me work and getting me out of my comfort zone, and I didn't feel myself. Well, that's obvious. But no, look, I was really disappointed in. Look, I was actually disappointed in both girls, if I'm being honest, mate. I thought Tara Brown, she talked it up, and I know they always do, but I just thought she looked awkward. She didn't really have any pop in her punches. She looked slow, and I expected Skye to outbox her, and that's why I was probably more disappointed in Skye, because when the heat came from Tiara, and it took her probably 3 or 4 rounds to really get close to Skye. And as you know, Skye's normally from a distance, the right jab. She does a little check right hook and she spins off, and she does that the whole fight, and that's how she wins all the fights. And credit to Tiara and her team for cutting off that avenue and making her go back to the left, which negated her a little bit and gave Tiara a bit more opportunity to get close to her. But when the heat came and Tiara got close to her and started banging to the body and really roughing Skye up, Skye just really had nothing except to hold and grab, and really didn't have any. And you're right about the power. That's a massive negative for Skye, because as she's going to go up in quality, you're going to get these strong guys, and if she hasn't got the power to keep them off, and now that blueprint's in place, how to beat her. I mean, can you imagine her if she had got that fight with Amanda Serrano? That just would have been, curtains for Skye, and I'm really glad she's got a bit of a wake-up call now. And I must admit, though, mate, I had Tiara winning 6 rounds to 4. Could have been a draw, even Skye 6-4, who knows, a lot of close rounds. But I actually thought a bit of the home cooking might come in and Skye would get it. But it's good that, that the judges saw it the way it should have been, and Tiara got her rightful decision. You can't run and hold and pity pat and expect to win a world title fight, even in the women's. You can't do it. And I thought Tara Brown, based on the aggression, deserved to get the win.
Look, it's actually a good thing for Australian boxing that they gave the rightful person to win, right?
Yeah.
It's actually better because that means more fighters will be willing to go to Australia to fight if they feel they're going to get a fair shake, right? It's always amazed me when there's all these obvious home cookings. Not that this one would have been home. Like, this guy would have won, I wouldn't have been outraged. I might have disagreed, but I wouldn't be like, oh my God. Like, it could have gone the other way. But just in general, like, when there's these home cookings, in the long run, all these promoters are really doing, not that I'm saying that there's any like corruption like that, but I'm just in general, if there's a perception that if someone goes to your country, they're going to get like they need to win every round to get a fair shake. Well, it just hurts the boxing scene in that country, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So decisions like this, I think, are actually good for Australian boxing in the long run.
Yeah. And we're just like every other country, aren't we? We do have a little bit of that going on, the home cooking, but, just like everyone else.
Yeah, but, I mean, sometimes they say there was home cooking, but there wasn't, like Horn versus Pacquiao, but I'm not, like, I thought Horn won, but it's whatever.
I'm with you. I'm too.
But, like, obviously, you're not alone in that. A lot of people felt that way, right? I did a show on Wednesday with Christine and them, and the first thing they brought up before we started talking about the fight was, is Tara going to get a fair shake? Are the judges are going to be fair to her? If she does win, are they really going to give her the decision? And I remember I said, you know what? I just felt like, I think it's sometimes overstated that you're not going to get a fair shake in another country because now with social media and everything, I think there's a lot of pressure on these judges to score fairly, more than ever, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. But it's and look, the fact is, of course, that there were three. Actually, there was, I think, an Australian judge, an American judge, and a neutral judge. I think it was. So as long as that's the case, then there should be no reason why fighters get a fair shake, no matter where they. I understand that they come to Australia and there's 3 Australian judges, and I've seen it sometimes. I'm just like, I just cringe. Like, how the hell did our guy or girl just win that fight? But as I said, no different to any other country around the world, apart from America, which always seems to be quite neutral. But the Englands and Australias, everywhere else, we tend to look after our own.
Yeah, as far as the fight itself, it's just like I don't want to put too much blame on one side, but it is kind of Skye's style to make it a very negative fight, and you know what I mean? Like when Skye's looking her best in terms of winning. Like you can't even hear. You could hear a needle like drop. You know what I mean? Like but that means that she's doing what she needs to do. Like, and in this case, I just think when that wasn't working, I think she was holding too much. It took points from Nina Hughes for holding. I was waiting for him to take points from Skye because she was holding a lot in that fight. And I just saw that's just not going to work. It's
sustainable.
No. I was surprised Raven couldn't do better than what she did. Like, to be honest with you, it's just that Raven just kept doing the same thing for 10 rounds, expecting a different result. So
that's what they all do, and this is the problem. And I said before, Skye, her whole fight plan, no matter who she fights, has been to keep it at a distance, and jab, like the straight punches. They get close, and she does the check right hook, and she spins off, and they just let her do it. Round after round for 10 rounds, and Tiara's the first one I've seen that's actually cut her off and forced her to fight, and that's why I said I was disappointed with Skye's performance, because she had nothing else to offer. There was no plan B. As soon as her plan A was taken away, that was it. It was curtains. And as I said, I wasn't that impressed with Tara Brown either, but she was just the more effective fighter.
Yeah, she was the most effective for sure. Shout out to Remy, salute brother, Dave and Chet. And he meant deep dive, not Dave. Well, there you go. Shout out to you, brother.
What's that?
Remy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, Foster's for Aussie beers. There, Gomez.
Hey, just a quick one for you. No one drinks Foster's beer out here, by the way. It's all just a scam. It's all to get you Americans to come to Australia. No one drinks Foster's.
No one drinks Foster. Is not really a thing.
And there's no one eats shrimp off the barbie either. It just says another one there. No one eats shrimp, and we call them prawns here, but no one eats them off the
And
barbie.
there's no kangaroos everywhere, right?
Yeah, we don't ride kangaroos everywhere. They are everywhere, but we don't ride them though. We're just trying to dispel all the things out there you Americans believe about Australia.
So,
And Australia does exist, by the way. It does exist.
oh yeah, that's right. There's people that think it doesn't exist, right?
I can assure
if
you
it existed, they think you should be upside down right now on the screen.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way to put you upside down and be like, look, he's in Australia, everybody.
Yeah, that way, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it is what it is. You guys are tuned to the Hispanic Cause Panic podcast. Hit the like button, by the way. Share this video on our social media platforms. Shout out to everybody on X watching through Calix's stream. 247 people watching on X. So shout out to you guys. Look, so Skye, obviously, like, do you think there'll be a rematch here, Lyndon?
Yeah, 100%. There'll be a rematch. Yeah. No, well, Skye is Eddie's golden girl, and it will, as we've seen, but there'll definitely be a rematch, 100%. And look, and probably there should be. I'm a big believer in. Actually, I don't really like rematch clauses as such, but I think if a champion gets beaten in a very close fight, they deserve to get another crack at it at some stage.
Now, and I agree, but I will say this though. I know a lot of the things that were done in terms of like, which make you look. I understand it. Eddie's gonna do everything to give his fighter the advantage. I'm not complaining, but they did kind of offer the fight very last minute. Tara didn't like the amount, but she did something we rarely see fighters do nowadays and said, "Look, I know I'm worth more, but I don't care. I know I could beat her, so I'm just gonna go do it. I'm gonna go get that belt, and I'll get my bag afterwards." And that's what she did, right? So now it's gonna be like she's gonna have more leverage, Tara. So that means more time to prepare, more time to get ready. And I honestly don't know what Skye could do better. I just don't. Like, I know theoretically what people are saying. Oh, but if she throws more, if she sits on her punches more, those split seconds staying longer in the pocket, it's going to result in her getting hit more.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think she can change anything about her style. And you're right. If she does try maybe engage a bit more and throw more punch, well, that's obviously just going to fall into Tiara's hands, and she's going to be even more effective. So I'm with you. I'm not sure Skye has a lot more to offer, but I think actually Tiara does have another gear. I'm not so sure Skye does, and I don't think the rematch would be any different. And it'll probably be, I'm assuming, in the States if they fight again, being that Tiara's American.
I assume, but look. Like Eddie's the one with the money, right? So if they offer enough money, I'm sure she'll go back to Australia. I mean, she got a fair shake with the judges. Not like she's going to be worried about some, so it is what it is. But
you gotta like that about Tiara as well, though. The attitude, like you said, that okay, I'm not going to get paid what I think I deserve and what I'm entitled to, but you know what? I'm gonna win the belt and then look down the track. And that's why I think a lot of fighters should think similarly as that, is to say, all right, well, let's look at the big picture. Let's just take less for this fight, because if we win the belt, the payday is going to come after that. And all of a sudden she controls a narrative. She controls everything about her career. She's not sort of trying to play catch up to these champions. She's got the belt. The other fighters have got to come to her. So it's a good way to look at it, and more fighters should think the same way.
Right. 100%. 100%. Shout out to Kane Mack in the build, Eric Gomez, Remy, all you guys. Shout out to you guys. So let's talk about the main event. So George Kambosos. I do have a question, Lyndon. Like, why did they do it in Sydney? Like, wouldn't it make more sense in Melbourne or something?
No, well, George is actually from Sydney. The whole setup of the whole event was that George hasn't fought in Sydney, or hadn't fought in Sydney since 2016 when he beat Brandon Ogilvie. And he'd been the typical road warrior. They had all his fights overseas except for the Haney and Lomachenko fights here. But before that, he spent a lot of time on the road. The Haney fight, or both Haney fights, were in Melbourne, and the Lomachenko fight was in Perth. So they just wanted to make it a big homecoming. Now, I don't know what they spun to Eddie Hearn because he was all excited about putting on in Sydney, but the choice of opponent, and I'm sure all the Aussies in the chat will agree that as soon as they chose Tszyu Jordan as the opponent, the interest was literally a zero. It got no traction, it got no exposure, and it really backfired. And I think they really hung their hat on the George Kambosos name. I mean, this is a guy that had 43,000 to the fight in Melbourne, to the first Haney fight. Second fight, not so big, but I still think they had about 10,000 at the tennis centre there. The Lomachenko fight in Perth, I think there was 15,000 there. Like big events. But as soon as they chose Tszyu Jordan as the opponent, the interest level was nothing. No one gave it any attention, and to the point where I'm sure you heard all the rumors about, only selling a handful of tickets and 1,000 tickets or something the week of the fight. And, there's conspiracy theories out there that Jordan wasn't sick, he wasn't injured, nothing like that. He was pulled because that was either replace him with another opponent, they were going to cancel the show. That's the rumors mill out there.
So I guess the reason, because I thought the events did good in Melbourne, you know what I mean? But I guess that had more to do with the momentum and the opponent.
But also it's to do with government funding. See, over here, all the sporting events are based on all the major cities. It's a bit different to America, where you got 350 million people and capital cities all over the place. In Australia, you've got sort of the Perth on the western seaboard, then you've got the eastern seaboard cities, Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane, and they all vie with each other as far as government funding to put these events on, which is why George Kambosos will fight in Perth. We had, back in the day, we had Danny Green and Anthony Mundine in Adelaide, which is not a fight city. I don't think they've even had they might have had one or two pro shows since that year, that time, was 2017, I think it was. So they all put in the money. Melbourne put up a lot of money. We are, because I'm in Melbourne, we are the sort of sporting capital of Australia with the Formula One and the Australian Open and the Melbourne Cup, all that sort of stuff. So that's why that event was here. But what's happened since then is all the other cities have cottoned on, and now they're all starting to be in competition with each other, which is why you see fights all over Australia. So it's a little bit different, but it's a little, as I said, a little bit different over here to what it is there.
Yeah, like I mean, it's kind of surprising to hear he's from Sydney because, well, I don't know, like, I'm not saying it was dead. They had a decent audience from the looks of it. I think Glacier was exaggerating. I know Glacier came out and said they only sold 1,500 tickets.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's true. That's terrible. But it looked like they probably did 4 times, 5 times more than that. But it's still, I don't even think it filled up half the arena, right?
20,000 seat arena it was. So no one near it.
Yeah, I saw a lot of blockage, and I'm kind of familiar with the way they do it. So Matchroom did a really good job in not making it obvious. There was a lot of empty seats, so shout out to them. That they did a good job with that. But I thought the event did decent. And it looks like Kambosos will now be going to New York. Before we talk about that, I thought he looked good early, and then he, I don't know, was he trying to put on a show? Did he get tired? Like, because it looked like a tough fight in the second half for him.
Yeah, look, I thought George looked really good early on in the fight, probably the first 3 or 4 rounds. Thought Jake, looked a little bit tentative, as you would. He's coming up against one of the top 2 or 3 stars of Australian boxing, former unified champion, of course. What's that, Kane? He did. Tim Tszyu fought on the undercard of Danny Green and Anthony Mundine back in the day. So thanks for that, Kane.
That's a great debut to have, by the way.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was maybe his 2nd or 3rd fight. He had his first fight in Sydney, and that was the fight that Tszyu went to, and he didn't go to another one until the Murtazaliev fight. He wasn't allowed because he gets a bit excited, does Kostya. But yeah, with the fight, I thought that George looked really good early. Wiley looked a little bit tentative, as he would, and I thought he looked really sharp. The problem came, I think, when he got the cut, and I think he went into self-preservation mode. I think the fact that the Hitchens fight was sitting there ready to go, he wouldn't have been able to see the cut. I think he said after the fight he thought it might have been another Tim Tszyu situation because he had blood in his eyes. So I think he just went into himself a little bit because of that. And I think he thought that fight was happening. He didn't realize, again, how serious the cut was. So he just boxed carefully. I don't think it was a matter of him getting tired. I mean, George Kambosos is one of the best prepared fighters you'll ever see. He just lives in the gym. So I don't think it had anything to do with that. I just think it was the fact that He knew the Hitchens fight was there and had to box conservatively. And I think he did exactly what he should have done in the situation. He had a young, strong, desperate kid in front of him who was really keen to take his opportunity. And he was a dangerous kid. He can punch 15 knockouts in 16 fights. And I just think he did what a fighter who's on the A side should do and get through a good 12 rounds, get rid of the cobwebs, and then set himself up for that Hitchens fight in, 13 weeks' time.
13 weeks. Well, I think he should be able to. And to be honest, he's in a very fortunate situation to be getting another title shot. So like he should take. I don't think he'll get another one if he doesn't take advantage of this one, right?
No.
But with that said, I just think Hitchens is I believe in styles make fights. I think he's a bad style for George. Yeah. I don't know if George wins that fight.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, I think, and I said again the other day on my show that George is very reliant on styles and how he looks. Now, Teofimo Lopez, whether you thought he was prepared or not, or all the other things going around, at the end of the day, he was custom made for George as far as his style goes. And of course, George fought the fight of his life that day. No matter what anyone says negative about George, you'll always have that win. And It was a sensational performance, one of the best, I think, of all time in Australian boxing. But then when he came up against Haney, all wrong, Lomachenko, all wrong, he really struggles with fighters that are counter punchers and are fast with their hands and feet. And that's why I think he's going to struggle with Hitchens. I think it's a bad matchup for George. I think, look, obviously they've elevated him to number 3, I think it is now, for the shot. So he's going to take it. Yeah, of course, you get offered a world title fight, you're going to take it. But geez, looking at who are the other champions at the moment? I've sort of got it up there. So you've got Russell, Puello, Lopez is probably out of that action for the time being. WBA and WBC champions, they would be a lot better matchup, I think, for George style wise. Hitchens is all wrong, and I just think we're going to get a repeat of probably the Haney or Lomachenko fight where he's going to be outboxed, and you never know. And the other thing too, I didn't mention too, he looks so small at 140. He looked small at 135. He looks smaller at 140. I'm just not sure whether he's going to have what it takes to beat Hitchens, who's a very classy fighter.
Liam Wilson actually did a public post saying, "Hey, I'll step in. I'll fight you." Like I don't know. Like I think that fight might have been a bigger deal if that was the fight. And I think, I don't know, Liam would have beat him, but I mean, I wouldn't rule it out.
The problem with the only problem with that though is the fact that Liam had only fought I think 2 or 3 weeks prior. So I think he fought on March the 1st. So it would have been 3 weeks. So I did see all the posts with Liam. And he was vocal about wanting to fight. And I've got no doubt he would have probably jumped in there and fought. But you saw the fight with Yusuf Dib. He had stitches in his nose. He had cuts on his eyes. His face was all blown up. He had 2 black eyes. There was no way he was seriously going to enter that fight. And look, I'm sort of glad that he didn't, because I think a Liam Wilson, George Kambosos fight, I know it doesn't probably mean a lot over there, but over here it'll be big business. So I don't mind the fact that it hasn't been just a 5-day throw him in and let's go. The fight needs to sort of marinate a little bit and get a bit more following, so and a bit more build up. So that's probably a fight that'll happen later in the year. But I think the fight that probably makes more sense, of course, is a Liam Paro fight. Liam Wilson's only come up from 130 to 135. I doubt he's going to go up to 140 to fight George. Liam Paro is the fight. It's just a matter of when. So I think if George can maybe get past Hitchens, if he does, I think the Paro fight would make sense after that if he can't get the unification with Lopez, I would say.
There was an interview with Eddie Hearn after the event. He said he signed the kid to a contract with Matchroom, which I think is great, good for him. But like every time promoters, this is just me, every time promoters speak, I'm always kind of like, okay, what's the underlying message? What's this guy trying to accomplish here, right? Because he starts talking about fighter pay in Australia, how it's horrible, and he brought that to light, and which also, I mean, I'm never against more fighter pay, right? So I'm not going to be the guy that like, why are you talking about that? But then he used it to start throwing shots at no limit, right? Like which I'm not sure what that had to do with no limit, but he used it like, oh, come on, they're charging $80 for Thurman versus Jarvis. How's the sport going to grow in popularity? That's why the pay isn't getting better here, and I want to bring better pay to Australia. It all sounds great, like, you know what I mean? But what do you think the end goal is? Because there's always something more to it. Like, it's not Eddie Hearn just out of the kindness of his heart just wants to come give money to fighters in Australia. I think he wants to be in the position No Limits in, it looks like, as a dominant force in Australian boxing. And I don't know what his plan is exactly, but that's what it sounds like to me.
It was strange comments, wasn't it? Because especially considering that Jake Wiley was scheduled to fight 3 weeks later on a No Limit show against Joel Taylor here in Australia I think it was on the Tszyu and Spencer card. And Eddie Hearn has rung No Limit, so Matt Rose from No Limit, and had to ask for Wiley to be released from that fight or that show so he could fight Kambosos. So it was really weird that Matt Roses or the Rose brothers have given him the favour by releasing Jake Wilder to be able to fight and save the show. And then after the event at the press conference comes out with those comments, it was really, really weird. And you're right, there's got to be some sort of hidden meaning or something in there, because he sort of brought it up without any prompting from anyone. And it was obviously directed right at No Limit, because No Limit obviously rule boxing in this country. Although Tasman fighters in conjunction with Eddie Hearn, they've obviously got Joe Pataya and Justice Hunia and others at the moment, so they're probably in the shadows. But it was a really interesting comment, and a comment from nowhere that just would have gave a little bit of a jab to the No Limit boys. So I don't think Eddie's probably going to get any favours from No Limit next time. And you're right, though. I think he does. And why wouldn't he? Eddie's a winner. So why wouldn't he want to go to a country like Australia and take over? That's the way these guys roll. But yeah, as I said, I doubt he's going to get any favours from No Limit going forward, who wouldn't have taken kindly to that. And look, the thing with promotions as well, I have these discussions all the time with guys on my channel. Yeah, we're paying $70 or $80 for pay-per-views. What they don't realise is that to put these big fights on, we're only a small country. We need that money to be able to fund the Tszyu fights, because if we don't charge $70, well, there's no show. It's not like you guys over there can get away with it, because I think the big argument here, we only pay $30 or $40 for a fight from the States, and we pay $70 to $80 for a local show. But people just don't understand the way promotions work, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll see what Eddie has to do over here anyway. Whether he does try and take No Limit on will be interesting.
Well, I mean, I guess for my thing is, I think he announced he's going to give the kid a contract for PR reasons. Because what's that money to Eddie? It's whatever. Right? He's like, well, I'll need guys for my cards anyway, so I'll throw him in there with one of my other guys or something, right? Or use him for another Australian card, or like whatever. It's whatever to Eddie, but like, I still remember when he released. I mean, it's not like when Jarvis got knocked out, he dumped him to the curb like nothing.
He did.
Like, why didn't he say, "Oh, Jarvis, hey, he stepped up. He put his own on the line. I'm gonna sign a kid to it instead, because I care so much about Australian boxers and I want to pay them." He threw him away.
Well, same as Liam Paro. A little bit of, I know Liam sort of wanted, but he was gone as well.
Yeah, Paro's gone. Like, you know what I mean? And you want to do all this. Like, it's just, the timing is just strange to me, because. So let me get this straight. Paro goes to Puerto Rico, pulls off a big upset in a very impressive win against Matias. And you don't bring him back? You don't have the new champion come to Australia? You have a fight in Puerto Rico against an American? Like something was off right there with me, right? So that's why I'm saying I just think the timing is a little... There's just something up with the timing for me. Right.
I think that from what I heard with the Paro fight and Hitchens fight in Puerto Rico is that they obviously expected Subriel Matias to beat Liam Paro. There might have been a government funding grant type of situation for Eddie, and he had a 2-fight deal with Puerto Rico to bring Subriel Matias back to maybe fight Hitchens after he'd been done with Paro. Of course, that went pear-shaped, and maybe they held him to the 2-fight deal. Although I don't know why. You wouldn't you have thought the Puerto Rican government would have said, Eddie, don't worry about the 2-fight agreement, mate. Just see you later. And he would have brought him to Australia. It would have been massive. And maybe that could be another reason why Liam Paro did leave Eddie Hearn. Now, I do agree with the move with Liam Paro from Matchroom to No Limit. And the reason why, I know Matchroom are the bigger promoters, but you said it yourself before, they just feed them out there, and once they're done, they discard them. And I think with Liam, with Matchroom, I think the only way forward for Liam, Liam's just another fighter of the Matchroom stable. So Eddie would have just put in there with the next biggest name, got the biggest draw out of him he could. And then when he was finished, he'd throw him over the shoulder and move on. At least here in Australia, No Limit. He'll be headlining pay-per-views. They'll be bringing in the right opponents for him to build him back up. So it's a good move. Maybe the money won't be as big, but I think Liam's maybe looking at the bigger picture as well and thinking, well, here in Australia, nobody knows who he is. With No Limit, that'll change because he'll be headlining. I think he's actually penciled in for June the 11th, I think, up in Cairns in far north Queensland as a pay-per-view. And I think Nikita might be on the undercard of that as well. So all of a sudden, they're going to try and build his profile. Where if he's a Matchroom fighter, he'll be fighting all over the world on different cards, and no one would know who he is against some really tough fighters. So I welcome the move from Liam Para. And also with the whole arrangement, he can still work in with Eddie with the Kambosos fight maybe down the track, but I think it makes a lot of sense for his career at this stage.
Yeah, no Limit has kind of, I guess, I don't know the term, loaned fighters, like Liam Wilson with Top Rank, for example. They're not like close to doing that stuff, so he can always do a fight like that for sure. I still think that if Paro would have beat Hitchens, a Paro Kambosos fight would have been a bigger deal, like in terms of for them.
100%. Yeah, it would have been massive over here. Yeah, but look, I'm sure the fight will happen at some stage. As I said before, I don't think the Liam Wilson Kambosos fight will happen. I'm not sure whether Liam will go to 140, and I also don't think that George sees that as a big enough fight for him either. At this stage of his career, I think he would see definitely Paro being a former world champion, and I think that would have a lot of appeal down the track. But he's got to get past Hitchens first, and it's not going to be easy.
Now, something, still in Australian boxing, but that took me by surprise. Did you see how, according to Glenn Jennings, when I interviewed him, right?
Great man, yep, the great man, Glenn Jennings. He's the best.
Jazzy Parr turned down a rematch with Shannon O'Connell. Are you surprised?
No, not surprised at all. I mean, Shannon is just that type of fighter, as well, and she's always well prepared. Yeah, she loses the odd one here and there, but she always comes to fight, always 100% ready to go, and she's a hard fight for anybody. So it doesn't surprise me that, well, actually, if Jazzy Parr was serious about her career, then she would be taking that rematch. It's her one loss, so of course she would. But no, not in the state of Australian boxing at the moment. It doesn't surprise me at all because no one really, if they can, wants to fight Shannon O'Connell if they've got other options. So it doesn't surprise me. And No Limit would have thought, oh well, we'll just go this direction, and Shannon can go that direction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were, surprised by what happened in December. I think people were expecting a beatdown, and there was no beatdown. There was a close fight, right? But like it wasn't what people expected. And I think the reason the Jazzy side maybe took that fight to begin with was because, and she said the quiet part out loud. She's like, "Oh yeah, I was training with Miyamoto, and I saw what Miyamoto did." So
she's like, not Miyamoto though. Miyamoto is a beast. She's big and strong and can punch, and Jazzy Parr is a super.
I think she was comparing her sparring with Miyamoto.
Oh, okay.
And how Shannon did against Miyamoto, right?
Yep.
And also disregarding the circumstances, like she was headbutted in the first round after the second minute, and she was busted open, and like it was just a bizarre fight. That fight, but I was just surprised by that. Also, speaking of Australian fighters, it's so under the radar, and no one even, and I guess maybe this is a good thing, but Taylor Robertson lost in Mexico against like a minimum weight girl, a girl that came up from 105.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened because there's no film on it. I did through the grapevine, I heard that she just had a bad night, basically. Just put it that way.
She had a bad night last year too. She was lucky to get a draw.
Yeah, so I mean, look, she made the move to America to start. She's at the Sweatbox Boxing Gym. They're very serious out. It's not like it's not a serious gym or it's a serious trainer, right? But like she's over there, and I always question this, Lyndon. Like, apparently she has a trainer in Australia, but the trainer is sending her out to other gyms in the US. So like what does it? I never known of a trainer that sends their fighters to another gym to train. What is that? Like what? I don't even understand that, right? But that's whatever. But I mean, in a weird way, it's actually good for her that no one saw it and no one like knows about it. Like it's not really going to hurt her profile because nobody knows that. Nobody even knows about the fight.
I didn't know about it. Someone sent it to me. It was on some social. Well, I think it was on some social media site, but no one covered it anyway. But I think, as far as a trainer goes, if you've got a trainer sending a fighter to other trainers for help, then what is the fighter doing with that trainer in the first place? Now, we haven't got all the resources that you guys have got over there, but we've got some very, very good trainers here, some very good trainers. And I know the trainer that she actually has done some good work with different fighters, but hasn't got a boxing background, has not, as far as I know, been a boxer themselves, more of a mentoring type of gym. And that's okay. You need those type of gyms out there. And he's obviously a good guy to have around. But if you're at the top world level, you need to get yourself a very, very good trainer. And we even seen it with Brock Jarvis a week or two ago with Keith Herman. I mean, what the hell was he thinking, having his dad, a rugby player, and his brother in his corner when you've got Jeff Fennick, who would just love to be there, and all their differences? Wouldn't you have thought they would have put it aside, get Jeff in your corner for the fight, and work out your differences after the fight? But that he had no.
And you're about to fight the former unified welterweight champion of the world.
Yeah, just ridiculous. Yeah. So, but look, he made the call, and he has to deal with the result of it. But as I said, mate, when it comes to Taylor, if you've got a trainer that doesn't back themselves to actually get the job done with that particular fighter, then what are you doing with them? You should move on to someone that actually knows what they're doing. And there's all types of different boxing trainers out there, by the way. You have the real top guys, then you have the mentors, then you have the guys that just open the gyms every day and have all the kids come through, and they pass them off to trainers that know what they're doing. There's all different types. She's at the point now where she's either got to get serious or we'll see you later.
Yeah, just because you go off to the States to train, that doesn't mean you're being serious, right? Like it's and the results are showing. Like I'm a results guy. Like you're struggling against girls that were put in there for you to beat. If we're honest, right? You fought a minimum weight girl. I mean,
yeah. I'm just looking up her record. What was it? She like 9 wins and 8 losses and something. Or?
Yeah, but look at the weights, Lyndon. This is a little girl, and not only that, with no power. And she went up to fight you, even if they robbed you. Let's say she won a majority of the rounds, but it's in Mexico, so they gave it to her. Like it shouldn't even been close enough for them to rob you. Like you know, like it's the way I see it. You know.
7 wins, 8 losses, and 2 draws. She had the other girl.
And I'm going to tell you, like every time I see an interview of hers, every single time, right? All she does is indirectly throw shots at Shannon O'Connell. I don't know why you're still talking about. Still obsessed with Shannon O'Connell. Like she beat you, it's over. Yeah, like, you know what I mean. Like you got to let that go. The trainer too. Like you're kinder than me. Like they need to let it go. Like, that's it. And all the I'm sorry, like inspirational speeches are not going to have you get wins in the ring. It's not going to happen. Although inspirational speeches, and they're not going to do nothing, right? And like I could do that. If in that case, I'm going to sign fighters, say I'm their trainer, and then I'm going to send them to a gym to have another guy train them. Like I mean, then I'm not the trainer. Then, like you know what I mean? Like
you're the fighter, by the way. You're supposed to have a trainer, and he's sending her off to train with other trainers. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all, you know. So and the only reason I'm talking about it is because I feel like she had a lot of potential. I really do. Like she was a bronze medalist at the Commonwealth Games. She, you know, I think Shannon clearly beat her, but she didn't like embarrass herself either. Like she did okay, you know. Like
with her though too is that she's a little bit like Skye. She's not as talented as Skye, but she's got no power at all, 0 power. And again, it's no matter if you're a female or male or what weight you are, you got to have some sort of power at that level. And unfortunately, Taylor just hasn't. So, yeah, she's got to go back to the drawing board. What is she now? 9-2-1. So she's still got time. She's only young. She's only 26. But, yeah, she needs to work out. Or maybe the move over there. Maybe it was just a blip on the radar. Maybe it was just one of those things. But, yeah, she's got to get her career together over there.
So that's Taylor. And of course, there's you already touched on about. I was going to ask you about that, but you already kind of answered it about Brock Jarvis. He had to rid of a finish like so close to the fight. And it's like a legend in Australia that wanted to train him. Like this is
He's been there for every fight so far. So, and Glenn's actually right in the chat there. He could have had Freddie Roach in the corner. It wasn't going to make any difference. But you've still got to give yourself the best possible chance to win. And the thing is that, and I said in the lead up to the fight, what happens? Keith Thurman, that old, wily old veteran, 2-time world champion, whatever he was, he's been around the block. What happens when he starts playing mind games with Brock? What happens in the ring if he does get dropped or cut or whatever? The game plan doesn't go according to where it should be. What is his dad and his brother and a rugby player going to do in between rounds? Nothing. So at least with Jeff, he knows all the tricks in the book. He's not going to let Thurman get away with anything he can't or shouldn't get away with. And just the confidence of having Jeff Fennick, this is a 4-time world champion in your corner. Just having him beside you has got to make you walk a little bit taller. And I know it's great having his dad and his trainer and his mate in there with him, but geez, give yourself at least the best possible chance of winning. Yes, Glenn, he had no chance even with Freddie Roach and probably Robert Garcia in there as well, but still, you've got to give yourself the best opportunity to win the fight, and he just didn't.
Yeah, but maybe instead of getting knocked out in the 3rd round, maybe he gets knocked out in the 9th round. Or maybe he goes a distance, or maybe he has a moment or two, maybe because in other fights, like lower level guys had moments against Thurman. I mean, he's not like, Thurman's not this flawless fighter either, so like he would have made a better account for himself, right?
Maybe even the game plan, like Brock's, I know he's very limited in the way he fights. He's just come straight forward and, lead with your face and hope for the best. And he likes to get in close and rip and hook and uppercut and everything like that. But, the game plan for me, right from the first round, the bell rang and he just looked completely lost. He had a few moments, but that's because Thurman let him have a few moments. As soon as Keith Thurman went from first gear to second gear, it was literally all over in 30 seconds. But I just think just to give yourself, at this level, you've got to give yourself the best chance to win, and you just didn't. So you get what's coming to you, I suppose. But yeah, not a great way to go out.
Even Thurman's post-fight thoughts, like he did the interviews. They did some great job over there, just covering the fights and to the media. So shout out to them. So there was so many of them, but I saw this one interview where Glenn. I'm thinking of Glenn R in the chat, where Thurman, he's like he's talking about the fight, and he's just like, I'm like, man, he really was not worried about Jarvis at all. Just the way he was talking about it, like, I saw him all like, tensed up. So I just thought, well, let me see what he got, Jarvis. Like, he kind of let him tee off in the first round just to see what he's got. Yeah, and I think he was like, well, after that, I finally just did what my trainer told me to do, and then that was that.
And who's in there? Well, I was just looking at there. And a good point by who was it? Kane. Jeff didn't want the fight with Thurman in the first place. So if Jeff had full say, which he did early in his career, he wouldn't have fought Brock. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that 100%, by the way, because Brock's 27, 28 years of age. So I don't sort of mind him saying, well, hey, at some stage I've got to put my hand up and see whether I've got it or not, because he's been stagnated for quite some time. So I understand it. But Jeff, again, not just strategy-wise, would have said, Brock, hey, mate, we can go down a different route and maybe look towards someone like Keith. But at the moment, mate, you're not going to beat him. So let's just stay in our lane, as you guys say over there, and maybe gear towards it. But I've got a feeling that No Limit have obviously bought targeted Keith as the opponent for Tszyu. And they've maybe thought, well, let's bring him out here to showcase him to the Aussie public and everything else. Who can we get? Well, Brock Jarvis will put up his hand. And look, full credit to Brock for having a go. But as Kane said, there's no way he would have fought if Jeff had full say in it.
By the way, and it's just a pet peeve of mine. This always happens when a guy talks. Fighters talk before a fight. Of course, they're going to be confident, say they're going to win, but for whatever reason, like whenever they lose, like people go to their social medias and just go at them. And poor Jarvis just got swamped with messages, people laughing at him. But it's part of the game. I've told many fighters it's part of the. It's just ignore the trolls. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Well, you talk it up, you got to back it up, mate. That's the golden rule in life.
Yeah, like the haha you lost is part of the game. It's an ugly part, but it's what it is. But um, I mean that I expected Thurman to win though, but not like that. Like Thurman
He
took
didn't
him
do
out early.
himself any favors though. Like Brock, and look, the thing is, I've known Brock since about 2016, 2017. I promoted a couple of his fights very early on. And mate, you wouldn't have got a more softly spoken kid. I mean, this is when he was only 118, 122. I mean, this is nowhere near the size he's now. As a skinny little kid. I think someone said before he was a weight bully. Well, he probably was. He was being really held back to make that 118 or 122, whatever it was. But barely got a boo out of him. He was the most softly spoken kid you've ever seen. And to see him in this fight, I was taken aback by the change in persona of Brock, and it just didn't really suit him. He looked really awkward with the way he was speaking. I don't think he sort of believed most of the stuff he was saying and doing, but he thought he had to really push the fight. And it's sort of blown up in his face a little bit afterwards because, of course, he copped it on social media. But it's just not him. I understand in this day and age, fighters think they've got to talk it up and yap and get in each other's face, but it's just not Brock, and especially against someone like Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman is the master. So you're trying to get a guy who's trying to manufacture some trash talk, and you're going to pick Keith Thurman of all fighters to do that with. Bad decision, and it just made him look. It made him look a little bit silly, if you ask me. And as an Aussie, I must admit, it made it hard. I'm not sure the other Aussies out there are watching it at the same view, but it made it hard for me to get behind him because it just didn't come out right for me.
It wasn't organic.
And it wasn't right. And and I just thought, mate, what are you trying to do here? You're just making yourself look a bit silly. But anyway,
it's kind of like look, Thurman's been on the other end, like when he was doing the T-Rex to Manny Pacquiao, and people clowned him after the loss. So it's just part of the game.
Yeah, it is.
But Pacquiao didn't start talking trash. So Pacquiao just said the same old. Pacquiao, you know how he was. He's like, well, I just hope it's a good fight for the fans, and he just kept it going. So just do that, I guess. But either way, you weren't going to get in Thurman's head. You were not going to intimidate him. It wasn't going to happen. So I don't even know why he was doing it, unless somebody told him to do it behind the scenes. Like, hey, we got to sell tickets. Like, go out there and talk trash. I don't know.
Is the entertainer. But I'll tell you what, it did work. It did work, though, as far as the Australian public goes, because everyone warmed to Keith Thurman. And it was a bit of a masterstroke by No Limit to do this before the Tszyu fight, because not only did everyone get a look at Keith over here and thought, wow, and I know over there he's a bit of a household name in the boxing world. Over here, the hardcores know who he is, but the general boxing fans didn't. So it was a great decision to get him over here, because not only did they see his personality and the way he hypes up a fight, but they also saw a very impressive win over Thurman. Now, everyone over here thinks he's Mike Tyson all of a sudden, and he's being talked up like, wow, Tim's got a massive challenge in front of him, and is he going to be able to do it? Now, it's going to take a lot more than stopping Brock Jarvis for me to get impressed by Keith Thurman at this stage of his career, but it's got the whole boxing world talking over here, and it's going to be a massive, massive fight when it does happen.
Yeah. I do think Tszyu, well, I'm pretty confident he's going to win.
He'll win.
There's still like the little questions in the back of my head, right? Kind of like, well, what if something was taken out of him back in October and we're underestimating how much, right? What if not stopping that fight sooner is going to show here? Like, I'm just guessing at this point. I don't think I think he's going to be okay, but obviously those questions are back in my head. But he's fighting someone who at one point was one of the big prospects of PBC, and this is a second opportunity for him, and a win over Tszyu in Australia, I think can do big wonders for the kid.
Yeah, good on him for coming over and taking on Tszyu. And you're right. I mean, there's big questions about Tszyu. I mean, we don't know what effect that last fight, had on Tim. It was a devastating knockout, and let's hope the fact that the fight went probably a minute or two longer than what it probably should have hasn't affected Tim long term as far as his psyche goes. Because I think physically he'll be fine, but mentally it's how he comes back, and that's why I think they've gone for Joey Spencer, who's. Look, he's an aggressive type of boxer. He has a go. I don't think he's a a massive puncher, which is I think was the key part of this fight. We don't want a puncher for Tim now, and I think Joey is a little limited, and that's why I think he's the perfect opponent for Tim. A limited type of style, not a massive puncher. I think he's custom made for Tim, but he's also well renowned. You know, former prospect of the year or whatever he was. So. Yeah, so I think it's a perfect choice of opponent. I think he's the right one for Tim, who will make him look good and give him the ability just to get back on track. And that's all we want from Tim at the moment. We don't want him to go out and have a devastating knockout. We don't want him to go out there and wipe this guy out. All we want from Tim, not just Aussie boxing fans, I'm assuming just all Tim Tszyu fans, it's just to get out there, just get through the fight, get a win, and then move on. It doesn't have to be super impressive. It just has to be, it could be a nice, good 12 rounds where he boxes well, boxes cautiously. It doesn't have to be a slugfest. Just get through the fight, and then we go to the Thurman fight later in the year, because he just needs to win. That's all he has to do is win.
If Tim goes out there and blows him out in the first round or two, right? I'm actually going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going to be disappointed is because, okay, you're not really working on what you need to work on, right? Because you're not going to blow everyone out. Like you're gonna face those guys that, one, you're not going to be able to knock out. They're going to take your punch, or their defense is too good. You're not going to take them out too early, right? So I actually want to see him put in rounds. I'm not saying carry the guy. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying put in rounds, box smart. If the knockout comes, it comes, and just fight that way. Like don't look for it. Just let it come if it comes. Yeah. I want to see at least 5 rounds, at least, in this fight. And seeing him be sharp. That's what I'm going to be paying attention to. How sharp does he look? Is he being more defensively responsible? I just don't want to see another Ocampo performance. And even though I was excited when he knocked out Ocampo, why would, like, you know, it was a quick knockout, took him out in the first round, or was it the first round?
First round, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. It was great. Everybody got excited and all that, but then, you know, and I think I even saw you mention this. It's kind of like, yeah, but I saw a lot of like flaws there. He's kind of lucky he didn't get hit or caught, you know, coming in. And I just don't want another performance like that. I want to see a performance where he shows, like, I'm levels above this guy. Look at me, I'll box him. And then if he takes him out, he takes him out. I don't even need a knockout in this fight. I just need him to win in convincing fashion and show that he's sharp and more, you know, more defensively responsible this time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would expect that the corner of Tim Tszyu will tell him to come out and box cautiously for starters and get back to being the Tim Tszyu that he started early in his career. Very methodical. He would stand in front of you, but he would make you punch first, and he would counter over the top with those power shots. Just a very calculated type of guy. And I think when he's had those fights with the Ocampos and those types of guys, and even Harrison, who he stopped as well, I just think he got, like a lot of fighters do, got caught up in, well, I'll just steamroll these guys. And obviously it didn't end well for Murtazaliev. But if I was in Tim's corner, I'd be like, hey, mate, let's get back to what we were doing early in the career. Patient, break these guys down round by round by round. If the knockout comes, it comes. But in this particular fight especially, I'm with you. I don't want him to go out there and wipe him out in the first round. Not only will that not be good for Tim upstairs, he'll be thinking, well, I'm back and here I go again. But also the Australian media and the boxing public put so much pressure on Tim. I don't want them, you know, with the backslappers again, getting behind him, telling him he's indestructible and Crawford's next and Canelo's next and Usyk's after that. I don't know who they're going to, but, you know, this is the mentality we have here. And I just hope Tim's team sort of shields him away a little bit from that this time, and they stay focused. I really like the fact they've said to Tim, or made a pact amongst the team, we're not going to talk about any other fights except the one at hand, and let all the backslappers do and say what they want, but let's just focus on this. And I just hope he gets back to being the Tim from a couple of years ago. Probably the Mendoza fight was obviously a great fight, a great win for Tim.
Yeah.
But and the Fundora fight will give him a pass on that because of what happened. But I just hope he learns from the Murtazaliev fight, where he just realizes you can't just go out and steamroll these guys. And as I always say, there's levels, and at the level he's at, you cannot go out there and just expect to wipe people out early. And I think we're going to hopefully get a vintage performance from Tim, where he's patient, he's calm, methodical, breaks Joey Spencer down, and maybe gets a late round stoppage or a decision win.
Yeah, Major Key, Zayas or Fundora. I haven't seen the Fundora fight, if I'm honest, guys. I was working all night yesterday. I was busy this morning, but I like I don't know how to feel about Zayas yet. This is a step up for Zayas. So that's the thing. But I do think Zayas beats him. I'm not that impressed with Fundora. I know a lot of people are impressed.
No.
I'm not saying he's terrible, but he struggled against Ocampo, guys. Like this is not a guy that is Mendoza was losing, but he was still getting hit by Mendoza. And if you keep getting hit like that by Mendoza, don't be surprised if he knocks you out, right? So he got stopped by Mendoza. And the Booker, I mean, nobody knew who Booker was. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but I got Zayas personally.
I agree. I don't know where the hell they found Booker from, but he shouldn't have been in a world title fight. That was ridiculous. So look, Fundora looked okay, but he still comes in. He's got his chin up in the air. He telegraphs his punches. He's not overly fast either, not an overly big puncher either. I think I'm with you. I think Zayas beats Fundora, and I think if he fought some of those other killers in the division like the Ortizes and those types of guys and Murtazalios, I think they'd knock Fundora out. And that's probably the disappointing thing with with the Tim thing. I think Tim lit him up for 2 rounds when they fought, and then of course the cut happened. But I think Tim beats him in a rematch as well. I mean, good luck to him. He's a 2-belt champion, but certainly I wouldn't rank him in the top 5 of the 154 pounders if I had to rank all the best ones out there.
Yeah. MAW with that $10 Aussie super chat. Hello, boxing fans. Eastyle, Linden, and chat. Thurman showed difference in levels versus Brock, but great buildup for Thurman versus Tim when Tim beats Spencer. Smash the like button and all that good stuff, folks. Hey, I appreciate that, brother.
About $3 US, by the way.
Is that? I think that's
$10 Australian. It's about $3 US. But thanks, Andy.
I think it's $6 US.
Is that something like that? Yeah, it's not.
It's much about anyway. 60. It's about 60%. You know
it all counts. He's a good man, Andy. He donates to me as well. So thanks very much, mate. It's appreciated.
Andy, huh? That's his name. I've been wondering what his name is. I keep calling him MAW. You know what I mean? But that's what his screen name says. You know. But shout out to Andy. Much appreciated. I heard he's a hardworking man. Man. That's right. Shout out to you, brother. You know what? Every time I bring up the Fundora fight or Fundora in any way, because people know I'm a Tim Tszyu fan, right? Like they just bring, here comes the Tim Tszyu fan making excuses. Like, look, man, you guys could call it whatever you want, right? To do it at a Crimson Mass for 10 rounds, okay? I've had blood in my eyes before. It stings, right? So not only was he blind, it was stinging him. And Fundora went life and death. Let me just tell you guys, around any other top 154 pounder, if Tszyu couldn't see, right, would probably knock out Tim Tszyu.
Literally fighting with the blindfold on. Yep. Yeah,
like it just is what it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but and that's why I say when people and then like, Fundora, he's his new guy. He's using his jab now. Well, yeah, against a blind man, he was using his jab. Let's see how he's used his jab moving forward. All right. And I would favor all the top 154 pounders against Fundora, all of them. And I agree with you. I think Tim Tszyu beats him in a rematch. And I still wish the rematch would have happened. I just do. But it couldn't happen because Fundora's nose was busted up. After 2 rounds. His nose was busted up, right? And the difference was that the nose was busted up with a legal punch. That was the difference, right? The other was an accidental elbow, but it was an ugly gash, ugly cut. I don't want to revisit the whole, should have stopped it or not, but it is what it is. It was a great fight and all. I was there live, right? But, we got to be honest about what happened, right? Like it's like the Murtazalian fight. There's literally no excuse. Like Tim Tszyu just got beat up in that fight. Yeah, like there's no ands and ifs about it. But I bring that up because one of his cornermen, Russ Amner, who's also working with Sugar Neeks now, by the way.
Is that right? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think he's an advisor now, and I believe wrapping her hand. That's one of the best guys in the business to have, to wrap your hands, to have an opponent's corner shaking the wraps, the glove. Like that's, if you want somebody, that's the guy, right? He's the owner of Rival Gear and all that. But so when I had him on, he said even they were surprised. Like when Tim came out, like trying to knock out Mudrazali in the first round, they saw it as a gift. They saw it like, wow, he's making it easier for us. And here's another thing, Lyndon, and the trainer revealed this on another podcast, like I believe his right hand was messed up.
Yeah, it was.
He was going in with an injury, and if Tim was more patient and didn't just jump in there, he might have noticed there was something up with that hand while the fight was happening, right? But he didn't get a chance to. He was just caught too early, and that's the other risk is just going out. Like you're kind of gambling with the situation when you start so aggressively, so anything could happen. Like you're giving the other opponent, you're giving your opponent a better shot if you come in recklessly, basically.
I thought Tim actually, I watched that fight a couple of weeks ago, and I thought that Tim actually started the fight very well. I thought he was very precise, but as soon as I think he had a little success with it, he might have landed a right hand from memory, and he hit Murtazalov, and it was almost like it all went out the window, and he thought, here we go, I'm going to have my highlight reel knockout in front of the Orlando crowd, and that's when he got caught. But I thought he started okay. I know a lot was made of, I think they might have collided heads, and Tim checked his glove. So much was made out of that, which was nothing. Every fighter's going to check their head if they headbutt each other. But yeah, it's just sort of like he lost himself. He's lost his composure, and even after the second round, when he'd been knocked down 3 times in that second round, I still can't believe that he wasn't told to take a couple of rounds off and move and keep his hands up. He went sort of out there and was aggressive again, and was always going to happen, wasn't it? But look, I reckon they would have learned a lot out of that fight, and I'm just hoping that we see the old Tim Tszyu and they go back to the basics and start afresh and get him back and learn from the experience.
Now, one last thing I want to bring up before we wrap this one up, and I want to thank you again for coming on, Lyndon, and shout out to the chat as well. Everyone watching on X, watching on YouTube, shout out to you guys. So you got a pub going in Australia, right?
Yeah.
You put up some boxing matches and stuff. I want to bring this up, so because I saw you even did the UFC event, right? And I have some friends here that own bars. We call them bar. I don't know. Do you call them bars there too? But
bars. Well, I got a pub, but we do have bars. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So they own a couple of like sports bars, and they put on UFC and boxing. And there's things that they tell me. I just want to know if it's kind of similar over there. So, was there a difference in the crowd, the price to put it on? Was there a difference in revenue, like in terms of when you put on the boxing or the UFC cards?
UFC crowd, they're sort of more used to, I don't know what it's like over there, but over here, the UFC crowd are the ones more used to going to a bar or a pub to watch the event. Mm-hmm. Boxing fans are a lot harder because they've almost been or used to now just sitting at home and watching it with friends or by themselves. So they've been the harder ones to get off the couch of the living room and come to the pub to watch it. But UFC, it's a whole, it's only been around for however long, 20 odd years, whatever. So their fan base is almost like the UFC is a type of sport where you go to a bar to watch it. But as I said, most boxing fans are just used to sitting at home and yelling and screaming at the TV by themselves or with their mates. But yeah, it's been a challenge. We've only been open 3 weeks, by the way. So, but the UFC crowd was bigger than the boxing crowd. But we're trying to change that. We've got Tim Tszyu in 2 weeks, so that'll be the test. I'm sure they'll all come out for that one. We've already had a lot of people inquiring about it, but it's not easy, man. I'm not sure what it's like over there, but pubs, especially over here, are a really tough business these days. Most people just drink a different way. So
one of my friends told me, and it makes sense, right? Even a Canelo fight, he says the people show up for the Canelo fight, right? Especially here, it's a Mexican American, 90% here in El Paso, and we're right next to Juarez, and this is so obviously, but. Even the Canelo fight, it's almost just like in the arenas where it's all empty and then everybody shows up for the main event, right? So, and the way he says is, if I put on Canelo, and not only does it cost me more, they just show up to watch Canelo and then they leave, right? Yeah. They're like, Canelo, we're out here, beast. One drink and leave, right? That's it. Yeah. But the UFC crowd, they've been conditioned to show up
for the whole card. I do,
right?
yeah, and that is another difference. Yeah, you're right, 100%.
Yeah, which means that's not just it's one drink per fight, not one drink and leave, right? And then the more they drink, then they start, the drinks start going down faster, so they start buying more. They get hungry, they buy food.
Yeah.
Hey, we've already been here for the whole card to stay here another hour. They stay and drink a little longer or whatever. You get what I mean? And they start socializing with people around them that cause them to buy even more. So it's all get shots, whatever it is, right? And I just think like boxing needs to do something, because is it the same over there as far as the price?
As far as putting the fights on or beer prices?
No, just buying, like to pay for the fight. Is it more expensive for to buy the boxing one and the UFC one?
Yeah, but a fight here will cost you in the vicinity of $700 to $800 to put on in a bar.
And that's for either one, UFC or boxing?
UFC is actually more, but if you subscribe to the year, if you say we'll put on every single one they put on, you get a 30% discount. But boxing is about $700 to $800 for the Tszyu fights, which is pretty hard. You got extra staff, and over here the fights are on a Sunday, so you got penalty rates, all these different things. So yeah, it's very hard to make any money out of it, but we are a sports bar and we're committed, so we're going to keep having a crack.
And shout out to my friend, but he's a big boxing fan just like me, right? And he told me it breaks his heart that boxing works this way, because he would love for it to be packed for a boxing card. He would love for a card where people just show up, and the Saudi card just aren't doing it. Like there's just not an energy for them, even though they're great cards. It's kind of like that old saying, like if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a noise, right? And they're dropping big trees in Saudi Arabia, but they're not hearing them. Outside of the hardcore boxing fan, people aren't hearing them, right? So like I just think something needs to be done for boxing to take back, or it doesn't even have to take it back, but just be a part of these fights that would attract people to that type of market, to a bar, a pub, a theater.
People just consume entertainment just different these days. And you're right about the UFC. I forgot to mention that before. You're right. When the card started, was a couple of weeks ago for the UFC, we had groups of young guys in there from the first fight with the Brock Jarvis and Thurman fight, which was a Wednesday night, by the way, which is a really weird night to have boxing. They were only there for probably the Michael Zarafa fight and then the Brock Jarvis fight after that. So yeah, but that's the challenge we're trying to come up against now, is to get these people off the couch and into the venue and stay longer and eat and everything else, and more importantly come back and support the pub, because I think very rarely are we going to actually cover the costs of that. By the time we have the wages and the cost of the fight and everything else, we're not going to make money, but hoping that it sort of balances out during the year when we get these people back, when it's not really a fight night, or there is a free fight. With Liam Wilson fight was free a couple of weeks ago as well. Right. So we had a good crowd for that. So it's just got to balance itself out. But yeah, it's a battle. But being most pubs these days are closing down, we're going the opposite and actually opening up. So we've got a bit in front of us. We're up for it anyway. Hey, before we go, I was actually surprised you haven't asked me about the Michael Kitsidis and George Kambosos situation. You obviously haven't heard about that over there.
I have not heard about that. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, check the socials. Well, last night, all the Aussie fans there are probably all over this, by the way. But Michael Kitsidis, who's 44 or 45 years of age these days, by the way, said, well, if that's the best George Kambosos has got, then I'm going to come out of retirement and fight George Kambosos. But what's happened is they must have had some sort of relationship or something going on, because Jim Kambosos, and this is a direct quote, has threatened to clip Michael, or have him clipped, Michael Kitsidis, and they've gone back and forth on social media, and it's gotten a bit ugly anyway. But all the Aussie boxing fans have got the popcorn out watching it. So jump on the socials. I think Michael Kitsidis actually put it on his Facebook. I think what it was is there was direct. Jim Kambosos has come right back at Michael Kitsidis on a private message, and Michael's actually posted those messages on Facebook, and it's just blown up. So have a look anyway, all the fans out there. It's I don't like to see it, but end of the day, if they put it out there for us to have a look at, then we have to comment about it, don't we?
This is my advice to all the active fighters, right? if an old fighter calls you out, just let it be. Like just
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know what it is. Maybe they missed the limelight. Maybe they wanna. Maybe he does legitimately feel. It kind of reminds me of like when Layla said something about Clarissa Shield, and she'll start to call her out for a fight. Like it's. I mean, like she's been retired for 10 plus years. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? You're not going to look good in that situation. I'll just put it that way, right? Just say I don't know.
Close doors.
If he would have just said, if Kambosos would have come out and just said, "Hey, well, that's a Katsides. I wouldn't expect anything less. You know, he was a great fighter. Of course, he's supposed to feel like he could beat me. Just let it be. That's my recommendation. Hey, this would look good, even if they started it like going back and forth with an older fighter. Like you know, it's still
George does have the habit of commenting on people's posts online. I must admit, if I was in his position, I'd just let it go. I probably wouldn't even look at the post, but he does get involved. But these were private messages that were made public, and that's probably where the whole thing's blown up. But it's just another exciting day in the chapter of Aussie boxing at the moment. It's always something going on.
I mean, it's like when Larry Holmes comes out and like, I could have beaten these guys with one hand tied behind my back. Like, well, Holmes is supposed to feel that way. Of course, he feels he could beat, if he was in his prime anyway, he would beat these guys today. Like, which I agree with him, by the way, but that's their story. But that's how he feels. But it would look, if Anthony Joshua came out, well, what are you talking about, Larry? Well, you want to come out of retirement? You want to get in the ring? It would look wrong. Like, you know, it's not a good look.
He's just got but you know, mate, fighters, they've all got egos this big, and they don't like anyone talking smack about them. They can't help themselves. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people polled on George. I've got so much respect for George Kambosos. If I was putting my my father figure hat on, I'd say to both of them, hey guys, just relax and keep it out.
Look, at the same time, the older fighters, they got to show their maturity as well, you know.
That's
but
right. Yeah, that's right.
I will say this. And a shout out to Remy. I thank you for the super. It doesn't say anything, but a shout out to you, brother. I appreciate that. Hard work.
I'm a hard-working man.
Shout out to him. I also heard Remy's in pretty good.
Man, that nigga was that Japanese guy was in state.
But shout out to Remy. I will say this about Michael Katsides. I was always a fan of Michael Katsides. And I know people will say, you know, he was never a legitimate world champion. Never won none of the belts. And there are just some fighters that just get a bad draw. Like, you know, they or not, I don't want to say bad, but they just fought against it. For them, they had to fight some really good fighters to try to win the title. And Michael Katsides, he had to fight Casa Mayor. Really good Cuban, really good fighter, and he really good account for himself in that fight. After some early knockdowns, rallied back, and I believe he got knocked out late in that fight.
Yeah.
And then you have to fight Juan Manuel Marquez.
Dropped him, yeah.
Right. And again, lost, but gave a good account of himself, you know. But he never got to fight for some vacant belts. He never got an email belt. He never got to fight. He never had to get elevated, or he never got to just fight like kind of like a Rolly Romero got his title shot. You know what I mean? Like just like a vacant belt against a guy that's not even ranked. Like Katsides never had that opportunity to do that, and I don't even know if he would have wanted it that way, quite frankly. He probably preferred it the way it happened. And some fighters they got to go through the gauntlet, and those are some tough.
The Aussie version of Gatti Katsides was just and look, unfortunately, they feel the effects of it later in their life. But geez, why they're in the ring punching on, they're just he's the warrior's warrior. He's Michael Katsides, and that's why I don't like seeing two people or fighters that you respect so much sort of going at it in a little bit of a childish type of way. So let's hope they pull their heads in and keep it private.
In their prime for prime, who wins?
Katsides.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think Katsides wins.
Yeah.
Ironically, like Kambosos is the one that got the big upset against Tszyu and had all the belts, and he has the accolade that Katsides
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure he would have had the power to keep Katsides off him, and even the big punches struggled to keep Katsides away. Imagine someone George who's got great skills, but you need more than great skills to keep off Michael Goutsidas. And I just think, his style would be all wrong for George, and he'd probably just be, a bit too much for him, I would think. Be a great fight, though. I mean, who knows? We still might get it. A 45-year-old. Let's hope not.
Maybe he got inspired by like the George Foreman story. Like, you know what I mean? Like hey, Foreman won the heavyweight championship at 45. Well, you know what? I could beat Kambosos. Like, but I don't want to. I personally don't want to see Goutsidas back in the ring. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Maybe he could do an exhibition against like another older fighter and leave it at that.
We'll see.
You know? But any last words, Lyndon, before we wrap this one up?
All good. No, mate. I appreciate being part of the Hispanics causing panic. And it's always great to be on, mate. Anytime you want me on, I'm happy to come on, and love the show, and keep up the great work.
All right, man. Shout out to everybody. And for Lyndon, we are out of here, guys. Peace.
See you guys.